Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to take a look at the Transformers Legacy Evolution Wave 3 Commander Class Armada Optimus Prime. Let me know what you think of this figure in the comment section down below. Is it a pickup or a pass? Now let's take a look at the figure's packaging. So here we have the packaging. Starting at the very front, we have Transformers on the side. We have a huge artwork shot of Armada Optimus Prime in his combined form with his blaster. We have the Legacy Evolution logo at the bottom. We do have Armada Universe Optimus Prime and an Autobot symbol all done in white text. And if we do look at the top, of course, we have the Legacy Evolution logo. We have a huge product shot of Optimus Prime in his truck mode with his trailer. We have a QR code if you do scan that will show his stats. And if we do turn to the side, hopefully you can see it. Hopefully there's not too much glare, but there's this really cool, almost stop motion type thing where he's in his robot mode and he's transforming into his truck mode. I think that looks absolutely awesome. On the back, of course, we have a ton of product shots. We have one showing off the combined form, the truck and trailer, and of course from the trailer to the base mode, it transforms in 22 steps. There's also a picture shot of the base Optimus Prime, of course, transforming into his truck mode. That transforms in 20 steps. And there is one last product shot showing off the Matrix and how it stores inside Optimus's chest. And for the final side, of course, we do have half of the Legacy Evolution artwork. And that is pretty much it for the packaging, so let's now get into the review. Here we have our Armada Optimus Prime in his truck mode. Let's take a look at the details. Starting at the very front, we have some really nice silver for this main grille section with these really cool kind of tubes or wires also done in silver, actually connecting to the tires on the wheel. I do really love this wheel design, really big, beefy, and bulky tire done in black with some really cool silver for the rim. Also, all 6 wheels are actually pinned, so this figure does roll like a dream pretty much on any surface. I love that detail that they really didn't have to do. There's some really nice clear plastic for this main windscreen section with some really nice glossy red for the main hood with some more silver paint-ups as well. Do you like the angles and the kind of spike design they actually go in here? There's some really cool floodlights also done in red, and we do have a very classic Autobot symbol done in white, gold, and red as well. We do have the exposed hands from the other mode. Not a big, huge fan of that, but honestly, from certain angles and views, you can barely even tell they're there. Typically, if you just look at the back, of course, you can see them, but from the front view and the side view, you barely even notice they're there. And if we do look at the side, of course, pretty much the exact same wheel design as the front. I do think the tire size is a bit smaller, but overall design-wise, pretty much the same thing. And the truck bed actually looks really good because for most Optimus Prime figures, typically where the truck bed is, they usually put all the kibble, all the junk, all the panels and stuff where they don't know where else to put. So I think they did a really good job. You obviously do see the huge combined mode hands there, which typically if you do attach the trailer to, you can barely even tell it's there. I think considering this is a commander class and it's almost $100, you know, because of inflation and everything, I think probably they could have gone the extra mile and maybe just added a small extra panel to cover that up, because I don't think everyone's going to always want to display the truck with the trailer, because, you know, if you do, you have to have a ton of space and it's so big and beefy and bulky. And I actually kind of like it a bit more simple without the trailer, so an extra panel would have been nice. I also really do like this really cool kind of mechanical detailing, circuitry detailing done in gold on the side. And if we do look at the back, overall pretty plain. And the other side, pretty much the same details as I showed before. So now for accessories, he comes with 4, one of which is actually a Matrix, which is already stored inside the chest. That mostly comes into play later for the robot mode, so make sure you stay tuned for that. He also does come with this huge blaster, which again, mostly kind of like the Matrix, comes into play later for the robot and the combined form. You can store this. There is a ton of mech ports everywhere, but according to the box and the instructions, they typically want you to store it or display it on the trailer, which I'll show in just a sec. So I'm actually going to put off to the side for now, but really nice scope work. It is Blastfocus compatible. Probably could have used some more paint though. I do like the black, but maybe like some silver, some gunmetal gray would have made it a bit more interesting. But there is 2 accessories that you can store on this mode by the instructions, of course, which is typically what I do. We actually have these 2 forearm blasters, a very classic weapon and trait, a part of Armada Optimus Prime. Pretty much the first thing I think about whenever I think of this character. Love the scope work and the silver, really cool kind of wiring and tubing detailing. They are Blastfocus compatible, and you just store them on the side like that using that same post and port system. Going to the other side, of course, just attach those as well. And you can imagine, of course, some huge flames shooting up into the sky. That'd be so, so cool. But that is pretty much it for the truck mode for now. Let's actually take a look at the details of the trailer mode. So let me just bring them out here for a quick sec. And yeah, it is a big, beefy box. Truth be told, I typically do not like trailers when it comes to Optimus Prime because they never have a very good use. They kind of just typically just sit off to the side. Actually, a very good example is the Kingdom Commander Class Rodimus Prime. I just have his trailer sitting in a box right now because I don't know where else to put it or display it. I actually really like what they did with this trailer because it actually transforms into a base. Also, it actually is involved really well with the combined forms. I probably, of all the trailers I've seen in the past, several years, this is probably the best one. But detail-wise, overall looking really cool. I love that huge Autobot symbol done in red. Of course, there was an identical one on the other side. I love the silver striping in the blue. We do have some huge kind of compartments and boxes. You could probably imagine like there's some, weaponry, some ammo, some energon in there, which is really cool. Love the silver as well. And these huge tank treads at the bottom, really cool pistons, scope work detailing. Maybe you could have used some more paint. Of course, they're actually not real working treads, but there is 2 rolling wheels on the bottom. Of course, 1 on each side, which is really nice. And there is some more gold on the bottom here, which mostly comes into play later for the other mode, but really cool to see. We do have the back, overall pretty plain. And the same details repeated on the other side. And as I mentioned before, that weapon can store on the top. There is actually several mech type ports you can see there. I typically do use the middle one. I think that just looks the best. So I'm just going to store that on the top like that. But really, as you can see, there is so many mech tech ports pretty much anywhere. You can really do whatever you want if it looks best. But of course, this is a trailer, so it has to go with the truck. So I'm going to show that off right now. And I have to admit, I really do like the option of the little stands. These actually just fold in kind of behind there, so you can just flip them up whenever you want to attach the trailer to the truck. And it's the typical way you've always seen. There is a huge post there, and there is a huge port right there. And that just lines up like that. And there we have the full effect of the trailer and the truck. And I think that looks absolutely awesome. Just a huge, big, beefy vehicle. I do have to say, I think the proportions from the truck to the trailer work a lot better with this figure than Motormaster. When Motormaster first came out, our previous Commander class, a lot of people were thinking the trailer was too big for such a small truck. They thought the proportions were way off. I think they did a much better job with this vehicle here, in my opinion anyway. Just the color scheme, the size, just overall really works. Of course, it does roll. I can't roll it very far because my space is, of course, very confined for such a huge vehicle. But let's now get down to some comparisons. I'm actually going to start off with some deluxe classes. Here he is with Beachcomber, overall looking really cool. And another deluxe class figure, Armada Hotshot. Let's actually move it up a scale. Here he is with the Armada Starscream, and I actually have to move him over. There we go. And for one final comparison, hopefully I can fit it in. Here he is with his arch nemesis or arch rival, Armada Megatron. I think they look so cool next to each other. And now that we have these figures, I think we have to have maybe some point in this line, Legacy Evolution, or the next one, an Armada Tidal Wave and an Armada Jetfire. It has to happen. I think that would be so awesome if we could actually combine and attach these two figures and just create one epic, huge Armada battle. But such an awesome comparison. That is actually pretty much it for this truck and trailer mode. Let's now get down to transformation. So now for transformation, we're going to start off with Optimus Prime. Here you're actually going to start at the very front. You're going to flip these panels out like that. Just kind of use your nail. Get in there. There is actually a tab on the inside near the wheel, and there's a slot on the inside of this panel. And you're just going to hinge that and tab that into place. Do the same thing on the other side. Just hinge that out and tab that into place like that. Then you're going to hinge this entire main grille section down, flip to the bottom, and you're actually going to get these tabs here and slots and just tab that into place. This will tab to the main chest, but I'm actually going to do that last because unfortunately my copy, it typically comes untabbed anyway, so I'm just going to save it for a little bit later. But now what you're going to do is actually untab the arms. As you can see, there is a tab on the main body and a slot on the inside of the arm. And just completely unravel that and hinge that out. Same thing on the other side, just hinge that down and out like that. Then you can actually get the shoulders and just hinge them down. Hinge them down. Unfortunately, they actually do not tab into place. If you're wondering if there's supposed to be like a tab or slot or anything, fortunately they do not. It's kind of like Armada Megatron. They do not tab into place, which is a bit of a disappointment. They typically don't move that much, so it really does not bother me. So now for the legs, what we're going to do is actually get the wheels. Just hinge these down. There is a slot there and a tab on the wheel. Same thing on their side. Then you can actually get these hip skirt pieces. Hinge these out. And then what you're going to do is actually get the legs and just get this entire section, hinge it forward. Then you're going to get this entire back skirt piece, hinge that back like that. And then the wheels will just flip all the way around. Another tolerance problem with this figure, this might just be my copy, but the wheels are actually supposed to lock into place using this tab. And there is a slot on the inside of the wheel, but they never really stay. So if you ever see me fixing the wheels during this transformation or another transformation or just messing around with the figure, that is why, because they just do not stay on my copy. Then you're going to kind of straighten up the legs like that. Then you can pretty much put these skirt pieces whichever way you want. You can separate the legs like that. Then you can actually tab the chest in. There is 2 tabs on the actual chest and slots on this panel. Tab that into place like that. As for the last few steps, you're just going to open up this panel like that, flip the foot out, close it up just like that, and then do the same thing on the other side. Just flip that down. Let me just quickly straighten the figure up. So there we have the transformation for Armada Optimus Prime. Let's actually transform the trailer into the base mode. So let me just bring it out here like that. And this is going to take up quite a bit of space. Hopefully you can see all the steps. You're actually going to flip these pieces in like that. You're going to go to the back, bring this entire section out, and rotate it around like that. And there is actually tabs here and there is slots right there, and that's how that piece was tabbed into place. You're going to open up these little compartments or panels, just flip them out, just get your nail in there. There we go. And how this was tabbed into place is there is a tab and slot. Then you're going to open up this other panel here, open this up like that. You're going to go to the bottom, untab this entire tread section and hinge this back. There is slots here and tabs right there. We're actually going to hinge this entire section up pretty much like that. It looks pretty crazy right now, but this will form a base of some sorts. You're actually going to flip these panels forward, and you're going to, I'm going to try and not make a huge jolt. I do apologize if it happens. Everything is just super secure and tabbed into place. You're going to untab this section from the leg. There is a slot and a tab. Same thing on the other side. Just hinge this down. And then you're going to hinge this other section down. And then you're going to flip these little panels up like that. And there we go. And then you're going to actually make sure this big panel folds under the smaller panel, and this will actually tab into place. And I'll show how that tabs together in just a sec. Do the same thing on their side. There we go. Then you're going to flip it all the way around like that. You're going to hinge this main weapon section up like that. You're going to collapse it like that and then rotate it around. And then you can actually hinge it back down. This is really just for clearance, of course, really just a matter of which order you do it. You're going to tab this panel into the front. There is tabs underneath and slots right there. And just push that in, and then you can just hinge this entire weapon section back up like that. And how this panel tabs into place is there is a tab there and a slot right there. That's just going to tab into place. Same thing on the other side. Tabbing that into place. And then what you want to do is actually go to the side here. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. There we go. You're actually going to flip this little pole out, and then you're going to hinge this entire section down like that. And there is a tab on the pole, and there is a slot right there, and that's just going to tab into place. Do the same thing on the other side. So just flip this pole out, and then just hinge this entire section down, and then collapse that. As for the last step, you're just going to get this little compartment here, flip that out, and there we have the base mode. Let's now take a look at the details of both the base mode and Optimus Prime's robot mode. Here we have Armada Optimus Prime in his robot mode. Let's take a look at the details, starting at the very top with the head sculpt. There's some really nice silver for the battle mask, some yellow for the eyes, and some yellow for the crest, and some really nice glossy blue for the main helmet section. Those really cool kind of ear fin pieces. There's some huge big tires done in black with some silver for the rims. Speaking of black, there's some really nice black striping at the shoulder with some gray for the bicep and the hand. As for the form, mostly done in blue and gold. And as for the waist, mostly done in blue and some gray for the top of the legs. I do like this huge chest section here done in silver. This actually was has the front grille section from the truck mode, which looks really cool at the front. I do like the yellow as well, probably acting as like headlights, which look really nice. And I do like this kind of layered paneled venting effect with some really cool mechanical detailing as well. And actually we do have some hip skirts done in gold with some really nice mechanical detailing sculpted and some circuitry detailing for looking really cool. We do have the tires on the side again. Love the design, huge, beefy and bulky. Love the black and the silver. There's actually some indents into the tire, really well sculpted there. And there's some blue and silver for the front of the legs and the feet. And as for the side, overall, really good side profile. Nothing sticking out too much. We actually just have kind of the top of the truck, which really doesn't look too bad. If we do look at the back of the figure itself, of course, we do have the combined mode hands, which I did mention earlier in the truck mode. I really don't care as much with the truck mode because, of course, if you do attach the trailer, it completely covers it up. This is a different situation because you really can't cover up anyway. I know it's the back of the figure. I am aware it is the back of the figure, but it is a bit odd to have the combined mode hands kind of just sticking out the back of the legs. It really would have benefited this figure so much to actually add an extra panel because it would have helped this mode and the truck mode. I really think they probably could have put it in the budget to do that, but really, that's my only minor complaint with this figure. As for the back of the arms, the back of the legs, really no gaps, nothing sticking out, no kibble or anything. Really just my only complaint is the hands. And the back itself, again, just that top or kind of front section of the truck with a really cool clear plastic, and I do like the silver detailing. And overall, just a really well detailed figure in my opinion. So now for articulation, the head can look up and down, tilt side to side, look left to right. Of course, the arms can move out and in, forward and back. There's also a bicep rotation. There is a double jointed elbow bend. The elbow can actually also, or the forearm can also bend back, which is pretty crazy, mostly due to transformation. There is also wrist rotation, which I was quite surprised by considering this huge forearm piece. Also, this other shoulder joint can slightly hinge in and out. It really should lock into place, but it really doesn't bother me that much. So there is no waist rotation, of course. Do keep in mind, of course, this figure does transform into a combined form. This entire piece here, the base Optimus Prime figure, does transform into the main head and torso and arms for the combined form. You pretty much essentially split the waist, and actually the legs themselves turn into the arms. So it does make sense why there is no waist rotation, of course. It is a bummer. I really would have liked one, but it perfectly makes sense. I can easily pass on that and give that an excuse. As for, of course, the hip skirts and the legs, I'm just going to move the arms out of the way just to get some extra clearance. Of course, the little hip skirts can hinge in and out, so I'm actually going to move those to get some more clearance. And of course, there is also a back hip skirt as well, so there is no ratcheting for the legs out, but there is actually a swivel at the top of the leg. There is ratcheting kicking forward, kicking back. There is also a knee bend, which is also a ratchet. And there is an ankle pivot. It would have been nice maybe if they added that little filler piece, so there wasn't a gap, but a very minor complaint. So let me just quickly straighten him up. Then we can get into the accessories, which I briefly covered before in the truck mode. So he does have this really cool looking blaster. Overall really nice, really well sculpted, which can be stored in his hand. Overall looking pretty cool there. He does have his classic forearm blasters, which do store, as I said before, on his forearms, which you can really put them anywhere. There's a ton of MechTech ports, but typically they do store on the side of his arm. Of course, that same post and port system. Just store them like that. I think that looks pretty cool. Same thing on their side, just store like that. And as for the last accessory I have actually not shown off yet is the Matrix, which overall is pretty simple in design compared to the, classic G1 with the orange, the blue, and silver. This is really just that gold. And I really do like that clear plastic for the crystal. Definitely more simple, but I really do like the design. You can actually open up his chest right here, and there is actually a post on the inside, and there is a port in the back of it. And that just stores like that. But we actually do have to quickly take a look at that huge matrix chamber with all the really cool silver, really well sculpted, all that circuitry detailing just looking absolutely amazing. And how this actually tabs in is there is a tab and slot, and that just closes up just like that, nice and simple. But that is the accessory storage. Let's now get down to some comparisons. So here he is with his nemesis Armada Megatron. And I think they look absolutely awesome next to each other. I'm not going to try and get them all in frame. So I think definitely with the scaling, this really does make sense. Because not in just the Armada series, pretty much any series movie, typically Megatron is bigger than Optimus. It's just always been that way. I'm pretty sure even in the G1 show, he was bigger than Optimus. So I definitely think the scaling works here. And just two very solid figures. This is a leader. This is, I would say, probably a small leader or a big Voyager if you're wondering about the class size for Optimus Prime. But they look absolutely awesome next to each other. And again, I do hope we get an Armada Jetfire and an Armada Tidal Wave to just increase their size and power and just create an awesome battle, and just would be so cool to look at in the collection. Now for another Armada comparison, as you can see, definitely in that Voyager scale, we do have Armada Starscream. You know, of course, he is very big and chunky. Starscream, of course, has always been quite slender, and he is a Voyager just on more slender, sleek side. He is very chunky, quite hefty of a figure, but they look very cool side by side. And now for some deluxe class comparisons, here he is with Armada Hotshot. And for one final comparison, that being Beachcomber. And that is pretty much it for comparisons and this robot mode. Let's actually now take a look at the details of the base mode. So I'm actually just going to move all the figures off to the side for now. So here we have the base mode, which overall just looks so cool. Definitely, I would say not the perfect base mode. I have to be truthfully honest with all the Commander class figures, you know, in the past, and, you know, like the Titan class figures, whenever there's a base mode, I typically do not display in that mode very often. It's just an okay one. I have to say, if I had to pick probably my favorite of all the base modes with the Commander class figures, I have to say definitely Skylynx, his entire, you know, sort of space station with his rocket. That one is definitely my favorite. But for what this is, I think it's pretty cool because, you know, this does have to have several uses. You know, it has to transform into a trailer, a base, and of course the legs for the combined form. So for all it has to do, I think it's pretty good for what they had to work with. I do love the Autobot symbol, you know, really nice silver, blue. I'm not going to go into that much detail because, you know, a lot of these paint apps and details were kind of shown off before in the trailer mode, and they will repeat again for the legs. But overall, it's a pretty cool base mode. Of course, you can imagine maybe if you have some of those original, you know, Armada minicons, you can store them there. Unfortunately, the modern day Legacy Evolution, they have not made any yet. I really do hope they maybe are trying to tempt those. But if you have any of the old original, you know, Armada figures, you can display them around them if you want to. And you can attach, you know, some of Optimus's weapons, like you can get his huge blaster. They actually do show it being stored on these ports here, which I typically don't do, but it is an option if you want to. And there is actually some mech ports on the side here as well. We actually do have the huge tank treads in the back, which I think is pretty cool. And yeah, overall just a really fun looking base mode. Definitely not perfect, but it's pretty fun for what it has to do. And if you're wondering about like the articulation for the turret, of course, there is rotation all the way around, and it does hinge up and down. And as for, of course, the, you know, kind of playability or compatibility with Optimus, you can, you know, place them on there if you want to. You do have to try and have like a solid ground there, you know, display them like that. And I will have to hinge the camera up so you can see them. I think that looks pretty cool. Again, I probably won't use the space mode that much, but it's overall pretty fun. But that is pretty much it for the robot mode and base mode. Let's now get down to transformation into the combined mode. So now for transformation into the combined mode, what you want to do is get this front turret section here, just lift this up like that, and how this is tabbed into place. There is a slot and a tab right there. Then you're just going to hinge this entire section down like that. Then you're going to untab the entire crotch piece from this main board section. So there are slots here and tabs right there, and just hinge this entire section up like that. Then we're going to go to the side pieces, which actually will form the legs. You're going to get the heel spur, hinge this entire section out like that. Then you're going to open up this panel, flip this panel down. There is a tab and a slot on the panel itself that'll click into place, and then you can actually flip this piece down. This will actually form kind of little side skirt pieces. Do the same thing on the other side. Just lift this panel up, hinge this entire section down, flip this down, and tab that into place. Get the heel spur, hinge that back. Then we can actually kind of stand the figure up somewhat. And so far, looking like this, you're actually going to rotate this entire section all the way around like that. I'm actually going to raise the camera so you can see what I'm doing. You're going to actually flip these skirt panels up, and you're going to rotate the entire top section around like that. And there we go. Then we can flip to the front here, bring the feet out like that. Bring the feet out. You can flip the skirts back down, and this front one as well. And then what we're actually going to do is go to this back piece right here. You're going to get these little side panels here, flip them in. You're actually going to rotate the section around, and there is these two tabs right here, and there is those little ports right there, and you're just going to tab those into place like that. Those will line up, and then you're going to close these panels, and there we have the bottom portion, or I guess the legs of the combined form. Let's now transform Optimus Prime to form the torso of the combined form. So what you want to do is actually hinge the entire shoulder section up like that. Same thing on their side, just hinge that up, and just have the arms out for now. You're going to disconnect this entire chest piece, hinge that out like that. You're going to pretty much spread out all of the hip skirts pieces out of the way, and you're going to split this entire assembly in half, which this is really the main reason why there is no waist rotation, in case you're wondering. Pretty much because you split the entire waist and the legs down the middle, so it's a really good reason why there isn't one. Then you're going to hinge this entire section out to form the shoulders like that. And if they haven't already, like the other side, there is a slot there and a tab right there, and there we have one of the shoulder panels done like that. And of course, same thing on the other side. We're actually going to flip to the back here, get the actual robot mode arms from the base Optimus Prime form, rotate these back. You're actually going to use the elbow bend, hinge that, or kind of collapse it like that. Same thing on the other side. There is tabs on the forearms, and there are slots on the back, and those will just tab into place like that. Same thing on the other side. Just tab that into place like that. And there we go. And then you're actually going to hinge the combiner head up like that. And make sure it actually gets past, there's two little kind of lips or tabs on the inside. You're just going to kind of push it past that so it will lock into place. And then you're going to push little kind of ear pipe pieces out into the position you want them. They can go a bit more forward or a bit more back, really up to you of how you want it to look like. And then you can hinge the arms down, rotate at the bicep. Same thing on their side. Hinge them like that. There we go. Make sure the wheels are on the outside. And we're actually going to get to the hands. You're going to open up this little panel right here, flip this up, flip in the foot, and then you're going to rotate this entire assembly around, and then you're going to go to the back, get the foot, and then flip it up like that. There we go. Then you're going to close this panel just like that. Do the same thing on their side. Open up this panel, flip the foot in, rotate around, and then you're going to go to the back, flip the foot up like that, and then you're going to close up this panel. So there we have the torso and the arms and the head all done. Let's actually combine them now, which is kind of hard to show. I do hope I can show all the steps in the best detail I can. I do apologize if it's a bit fiddly and wobbly at times, because it's not the most smooth, transformation or combination, but I'm going to do the very best I can. So what you're going to want to do is bring in the legs right here. You're actually going to open up this entire compartment. There's this entire slot section right here. You're going to get the chest panel from the base Optimus Prime mode, and it's just going to slip or kind of slide right into place, which can be a bit tricky to align at times, but that should just slide into place like that. Then you're going to go to the back. There is two tabs, pretty much where the neck is or near the head is, and there is slots there and tabs right here, and that's just going to tab into place like that. And as for one of the last steps, you can see there's this entire kind of locking system here. These clips are going to go into those slots right there. So that's just going to tab into place like that. Close that up. And there we have our Armada Optimus Prime in his combined mode. Let's take a look at the details. Here we have our Armada Optimus Prime in his combined mode. Let's take a look at the details, starting at the very top with the head sculpt. There's some blue for the main helmet section, some yellow for the eyes, some gold for the main mouth guard, and there's some gold for the crest, and some gold for these really cool kind of pipe ear pieces or kind of fin pieces, which look really cool. There's some really nice cybernetic detailing done in gold and blue at the shoulder with the really cool wheels at the forearms, and of course we do have the huge hands done in gold, which overall look really nice. We do have some gray for the biceps, some silver and blue for the forearm. As for the chest, as you look at this entire section here, it actually actually is really cool how it's actually the front or kind of the top section of the truck from the base Optimus Prime figure, which looks really, really cool right here. Some really nice silver, some red, a very classic Autobot symbol right here done in red, white, and gold. Overall looking really, really cool here. And of course we do have the trailer, which actually just formed the legs now, which I think is such an excellent use and creative way of using the trailer. Of course, I know this design has been around for a really long time, but I think it works so well for this figure because, as I mentioned before, I'm going to re-say this complaint. I've always had a big problem with the Optimus Prime figures because they do have a trailer, but they never use it in the right way. It kind of just sits off to the side. Same goes for Optimus Prime. His Commander class figure, he comes with a trailer, and I just put it in a box because I don't know what else to do with it because it's just kind of a boring box. But this has such a creative way to use it. I think it looks super cool part of this combiner. But we have some really nice gold and blue for this entire hip skirt section. We have some more pieces on the side, of course, with some really cool Autobot symbols. We do have these kind of cannon sections at the knees done in gold and blue. We have some black for the feet. And if we do look at the side, yes, there is a bit of kibble on the back. I can obviously see that, but I can easily cut it some slack considering how many modes and how many things this figure does. Of course, the trailer and the base Optimus Prime included. There is just so much stuff going on, so I can easily allow a bit of kibble. This entire backpack section right here really doesn't bother me because it actually looks kind of cool to have this entire turret section and these treads. Really, the only worst part or the only bad part is this entire kind of butt flap, which again really doesn't bother me considering the amount of things this figure can do. But that is pretty much it for the details. So now for articulation, I'm going to show him as best I can because again, he's so big and I don't have that a lot of space. I will try and show it as best I can. But of course, the head can look up and down, tilt side to side, look left and right. The shoulders can move forward, back, and they can also the arm can also move out. The shoulder can also move up and down, which is really cool. There is a bicep rotation. There is a ratcheting elbow bend forward and back. There is also the hand. The fingers can actually open and close. And yes, that is one of the major complaints a part of this combined form. A lot of people were really hoping for that, reappearing, disappearing gimmick like on Jetfire where the port, would appear and disappear or kind of like retract, which is a cool gimmick. I can understand why. I can kind of understand why it's not there because there's actually a ton of mechanical and like components inside there, like the feet from the remote mode. So I can understand why there's really not that much space to actually do that gimmick because it probably requires a lot of space and technical parts for it to work. But the fingers can open and close, which is quite cool. Of course, all the hip skirts pieces, like the front crotch piece and the side pieces can move up to accommodate the articulation, which I'm actually going to show the legs right now as best I can. So of course the legs can kick forward on ratchets and back. A bit limited due to that backpack, and also, of course, out to the side, not on ratchets. There is rotation at the top of the leg, a ratcheted knee bend to a very good degree, and there is an ankle pivot, which I'm actually really glad they added some of that little filler pieces in there so there's not a huge gap. Let me just quickly straighten him up into a more normal pose, like that. There we go. Move the arms down. So as for accessory storage, I actually already do have the little forearm blaster pieces from the base Optimus Prime mode, because according to instructions, you really do not have to remove them. There's no area or way they actually get in the way, so you can technically leave them on. And of course, the Matrix is already stored inside the chest, but as for that huge big blaster, of course, you can put this in either hand, which I think looks really cool. Definitely looks the best in this mode. It might be too big of a blaster for the base Optimus Prime. Definitely a decent size, a good size for this figure right here, but overall, an amazing combiner or combined mode in my opinion. Now for a few comparisons, here he is with another Commander class figure. Hopefully he can get in the shot because he's just such a big figure, but here he is with another Commander class figure, that being Jetfire. And I think they look really cool. He's actually the very first one. I think they look pretty cool side by side. He is a bigger figure, but still this combiner, this mode is a pretty good, decent size. He is quite tall, but they look pretty cool side by side. And please do let me know in the comment section down below of all the Commander class figures we've gotten so far. I'm pretty sure we're actually also supposed to be getting an Ultra Magnus soon. I'm really looking forward to how that's going to turn out. But of the ones that are actually out, which one is your favorite? Let me know in the comments section down below. But for one final comparison, here he is again with his arch nemesis, Megatron. So just kind of show, the scale and size. This is a decent sized leader, and of course you can see he pretty much towers over him. So it is a very big combiner, and I think they look really cool side by side. And that is pretty much it for the combine mode. Let's now get down to the final thoughts. Now for the final thoughts for the Transformers Legacy Evolution Wave 3 Commander Class Armada Optimus Prime. Overall, a really solid release. Probably one of my favorite Commander classes so far. But I'm actually going to start off with my complaints because there is very, very few. Starting off with the first one, I have to say they probably should have added maybe an extra panel to cover up the combined mode hands and all the other modes. It is very useful. They do look really cool in the combiner mode itself. There's quite a few modes like the truck you see before you and actually the base Optimus Prime mode where you can actually see the exposed combined mode hands, and it looks a bit odd. They're actually at the truck bed, so just an extra panel would have been nice to cover them up because they look a bit weird in the places where you can see them, like the truck bed and the back of the legs in the base Optimus Prime mode. Also, I do think maybe this figure could come maybe with some more accessories because he does look cool with his, his signature form weapons and of course his huge blaster. And I do like the Matrix inclusion, but maybe like some blaster pieces would have been nice because I'm pretty sure so far of all the Commander class releases, only this one and Motormaster have not included blaster pieces, which I can easily understand with Motormaster because he really doesn't, his weapons aren't really his signature thing. His signature thing is his sword and of course combining, but with Armada Optimus here in the show, he used quite a few weapons and blasters, so I think, some new blaster pieces probably would have made this figure just that much better. As for articulation, overall pretty good in every single mode. I really don't have any complaints. I do have a complaint as of tolerances though, especially for the base Optimus Prime figure. I think the ankles are just a tad bit too loose because there is at times where it can kind of lean forward. You might have noticed that during the review at some point, but not too loose to a point, of course, where it actually falls over or it's a problem, actually keeping it standing or it's not unstable. Just sometimes leans a little bit forward or a little bit back, so that could have been a bit better. Also, the base mode, I do have to say for most of these Commander class figures and Titan class figures included, usually the base mode is actually the last thing that you actually want to look at or transform. They typically don't put that much time or attention, so I think maybe they should have either just scrapped the base mode and just put more money and more budget into every single mode. Not saying that all the other modes are bad, but they could have just made them absolutely perfect, such as the panels and maybe some more paint apps, just little details like that. Or they could have just made the base mode a bit better, because it just seems like every Commander class figure and Titan class figure, it's usually, kind of the lame mode. They don't put that much time or attention and just isn't that interesting. The base mode is okay. Probably if I were to pick a favorite of all the Commander class figures, I have to say Skylink's, his base mode is the best because it's like an actual airport, kind of like a space station, which looks so cool. So maybe if they took a bit more interesting details like that and put it with this one, it's an okay base mode. Really all it's got going for is that small little turret. I think the rest of it is just kind of plain and not really interesting. It's a bit too simple, but it does look pretty cool when you place some figures next to it. If you have any of the original Armada figures or maybe some of the new modern day ones, you can create a whole battle there. And I really do hope in the future of the Legacy Evolution and the lines after, they can continue making figures so we can create an entire Armada display. But as far as complaints go, that's pretty much it. Really getting into the things I like. Tolerances are pretty much amazing, minus the ankles. Everything else, really nice tight joints. I do think I do have one last complaint, which isn't a major one. I have heard other people say this. I did kind of save it for last because it's a very, very minor one. But the shoulders don't really tap into place with the base Optimus Prime mode, which really doesn't bother me. They're actually more locked into place than Armada Megatron. His shoulders don't really tap into place at all either, which those are much looser. So it's a very minor complaint. You can barely even tell. Just sometimes when you're posing the figure around or messing it around with a hand, they can sometimes slightly move just a tad bit. So it would have been nice if there was an actual locking system or tap to keep it in place. But other than that, all the other tolerances in the base Optimus Prime mode, the combiner mode, really tight joints, tons of ratchets. I do have a bit of a question. This isn't really a complaint, just kind of I don't really understand, but for the base Optimus Prime and the combined form, there are no ratchets for the legs going out. There are ratchets for the legs going forward and back and the knee bend, but none out, which I really don't understand. It doesn't really bother me because the movement outward of the legs isn't loose or anything. I would be more bothered, if it was loose and they refused to do ratchets, but they're still perfectly tight. I really don't understand why they skimped out on the ratchets for the movement outward. I really don't understand. Paint apps wise, of all the modes, really impressive. I think there are probably a few areas, can't really name them specifically because there's just so many modes, but there probably is a few areas where they maybe could have used some more paint apps to freshen up the details, because there's some really nice scope work I have remembered and seen on all of the modes that just could have used some more paint apps to highlight them and make them more noticeable and interesting. But as for accessories, I did previously mention it comes with a blaster, the two, signature forearm weapons, which are actually really cool. All the blasters are blaster piece compatible, which is kind of why I was saying maybe a blaster piece would have been nice to actually attach to those, weapons, and rather than just taking it from another figure we already own. It also does come with the matrix, which is pretty cool. You can store it in the chest. It is rather simple. I've never really been a huge fan of the design, of course. That's not really a complaint to this figure specifically. Of course, they're just going by the show itself. It was always a very simple matrix, a lot more simple than the G1 or other ones we've seen in the movies and other shows, but still pretty cool how it can store in the chest. I do like all the scope work in the matrix chamber itself. I think that looks really, really nice. He does not have a waist rotation. I have to cover this again because I don't want people, dissing on this figure, getting mad at this figure. He doesn't have a waist rotation, which is perfectly understandable in my opinion, because the entire waist itself and the legs split in half to form the shoulders and arms of the combined form, so that's completely understandable. If they actually didn't have that combined form with this figure, of course he would have a waist rotation, but because he does, I can completely pass on that and give an excuse for that. I really do not care. But other than that, really good articulation in all the modes. I really do highly recommend this figure. I think probably this is one of the more worthwhile figures. I know people were probably questioning Motormaster and Optimus Prime about their $90, $100 price point, because they're definitely on the smaller side. This is one of the bigger ones, almost Jetfire size. He's just a little bit short of Jetfire. And, Skylinks is definitely one of the bigger ones, but I definitely think he's worth that $90 price point. Of course, with Motormaster and Optimus Prime, you are paying for the engineering. This one definitely is more of a simple transformation, which I'm actually kind of glad. I was worried when I was purchasing this figure that the combination, with combining Optimus and the legs was going to be, like, super hard and impossible, and all the other modes were going to be super hard and challenging. I wouldn't say they're easy, but they're definitely not, hard and annoying, like you don't want to transform it. I do find myself at times, like with Optimus Prime, I don't want to transform him because he's just too complex and it is kind of annoying at times. So definitely one of the more fun, easy figures, more relaxing figures that you can transform with ease. So I really do highly recommend this figure. I do hope you enjoyed this review. Hopefully it wasn't too long. I was trying to make it as compact, and condensed as possible. I didn't want like an hour-long video on this figure, but let me know your thoughts on this new Commander Class figure in the comment section down below, and I will see you next time.